Good afternoon, everyone. This is Colton from Jennifer Schaus & Associates. We are coming to you live from Washington, D.C. Thank you to everyone who has joined us today. We are kicking off 2022 with a complimentary new webinar series, and it is for our GIFT program, that is Government Industry Parties. And this webinar series is designed for companies who are trying to reach government contractors. Content can be related to anything related to building a sellable firm, which is what we are covering today, and any other topics that are suitable for government contractors. This program is going to be a three-part series for companies to reach federal contractors by doing either 1, 2, or 3 webinars, typically running about 30 minutes each. We'll promote it through our newsletter, which reaches over 23,000 subscribers. We'll be hosting on our GoToWebinar platform, and we will record the webinar and upload it to our YouTube channel. And the PowerPoint will go to slideshare.net. If you want information on pricing, please email hello@jenniferschaus.com. And here's just a couple of statistics for once our webinar has been put on and is recorded. Our YouTube channel is now at about 38,000 subscribers, and we are reaching up to 3.7 million impressions. As you can see, our top 4 videos have thousands of downloads and some decent numbers there on the click-through rate. And again, if you want pricing and information on the program, send us an email and we're happy to provide our media kit. Without further ado, I'm going to hand this over to Luis Corrales from GovCon Wealth. And Luis, it was great to have you with us today.
Thank you, Colton. Yeah, really appreciate you having us here on the program, and hope everyone's having a great day and a great afternoon. It's a pleasure to be with all of you, and as a continuation from my partner last week, this is part 2. We have a 3-part series on planning, growing, and selling your government contracting business. My partner covered the plan section last week, wealth and tax strategies. I'm going to talk about how to grow and build a sellable GovCon firm. And then my partner will discuss how to successfully exit and the key points to take into account there. So we can go to the next slide, Colton. I'm not sure, Colton, if we're having a little technical difficulty with the slide. It seems like I'm still seeing the prior one.
The slide that should be up is building a sellable GovCon firm. Can you see that?
No, for some reason I can't see it. I know the slide still, so I can certainly go over it, but that's not what I'm seeing on my screen.
Okay, so yeah, I'm on building a sellable GovCon firm. So if you want to talk about that, and then I'll just keep up with you.
Sure, yeah, so you can go to the next slide. So again, as I discussed, it's a 3-part series, plan, grow, and sell. So we can go to the next slide, Colton, that says building a sellable GovCon firm. So as we think about GovCon and part of the series, some of the things that we want to highlight today is what are buyers looking for? What are potential buyers looking for, and how do what buyers are looking for, how does that fit in with your objectives? And we listed out a few considerations here. Number 1 is we always advise our clients in helping them with their growth of their company. We always advise them to begin with the end in mind, right? Are you building a lifestyle company, or are you building an enterprise value company? And if you're building the latter, then the question is who are the possible buyers for the company, and how does that fit in with your goals? So we've kind of broken it down into there's internal buyers and there are external buyers, and each set of buyers looking for different things. So an internal buyer is we would consider key employees, such as a management team that maybe wants to take some ownership in the company and buy into the firm. Or an internal buyer can also be all the employees. And there's some tax benefits to selling to all your employees. The technical term for that is called an ESOP. And there are some benefits towards going down an ESOP path, but there's certainly some downsides of going down an ESOP path. And from an external standpoint, there are what we call strategic buyers, which are your kind of peer much bigger companies. And then there are financial buyers, which there's more and more of them now, which are private equity firms that are coming in and buying many of our clients' companies. From an internal standpoint, it allows our clients to, in some ways, be much more in control of the process because you're selling to folks that you already know. You're selling to folks that are your management team that have likely been with you for quite some time, or you're selling to your employees. And so as a result of that, you'll be able to design a path that is more than likely resembles something closer to maybe what you want. The challenge, though, with an internal buyer is that they probably don't have the money to actually buy in. So that means that it's going to take a lot longer for you as the owner to exit out. From an external standpoint, buyers are looking for, the second point that's on this slide deck, which is what type of contracts are they buying? Are they buying full and open type work, which has been competed that you as the company have won against the big boys, whether it's Accenture and Deloitte and IBM, or are they buying small business type work, that often fall in the set aside world? And so as we think about building a sellable firm, we always pay close attention to that. We pay close attention to what is the revenue makeup of our client's company. Is it 100% set aside small business work, or is there a portion, and maybe a large portion of the work that has been won and competed, and that's full and open type work? And clearly, from a valuation standpoint, there's a lot more value to contracts that are full and open. We've gone through this process with many of our clients, and it's very clear the multiples are just much greater when you have full and open type work. The other big thing is if you want to build a sellable firm, you're building an asset that can be transferred to someone else so that the company can be there to run without you as the founder, as the owner. So then the question becomes, are there people in place? Is there a management team in place that can step into that role? Are there folks that are going to stay with the company and be able to participate on its future growth? And with any sort of service business and even any sort of product company, generally they're only as good as their people. And if there's no management team in place, if there's no C-suite or key folks in place to run the company in your absence, once you've departed and set off into the sunset, then clearly the valuation won't be as robust as perhaps what you would expect. And we're going to talk a little bit more about how to align, and then I'll share a case study on a recent engagement that we worked on with the client in terms of how to align your team and how to align your team from a compensation standpoint with the growth that you want and your exit objectives. Fourth bucket is buyers want to have a clean set of financials. Buyers want to limit and reduce financial exposure. They want to reduce any sort of tax exposure. And many times when we've come in on engagements as business consultants, as advisors, and as wealth managers, we run into instances where a company has likely outgrown a bookkeeper or has outgrown maybe a CPA that they started out with. If they have pursued any banking relationships and line of credit relationships, they might have even upgraded to reviewed financial statements, perhaps even audited financial statements. But what we've noticed is one area that has tripped up a lot of our clients, especially in the environment that we live in today, which is a very much hybrid or remote work environment, and employees working in many different states. we have seen transactions that have been tripped up because of state tax exposure, because the state taxes haven't been taken properly into account. And again, that becomes a red flag for any clients that are in the diligence phase. So having proper financial records, having the proper accounting system. If you've grown and you're growing, there's many specialized systems out there that our clients have used, whether it's Uninet or Deltek, that really allow our clients to scale and be a lot more efficient. Some other considerations are, which are very, very important as well as you grow a firm, is do you have an operating agreement in place right now for the firm? Is there a document that spells out what the continuity of the firm would look like in the event you or the founders get hit by the proverbial bus, right? That's clearly a big risk. And again, as we think about starting with the end in mind, these are the things that we want to make sure we have in place: a continuity plan. We want to have the proper buy-sell agreement, which is an operating agreement. And we also want to look at, is there a valuation for the company? Do you have a rough sense of what companies are trading for, both on the internal market of selling to your employees, selling to your management team, or have you gotten the pulse check on what the market looks like right now? And as my partner described last week, it is a frothy market for a above average type company, right? And so that's something important to look at. And then the other point is, as you build a sellable firm, it likely represents a large part of a founder's net worth. So the question becomes, is that asset owned in your personal name, or have you already started doing some more robust estate planning and started transferring some of those shares into a family trust? If you haven't done that, or if you've explored it but haven't executed on it, that's been an area that we've been able to advise a lot of our clients, and again, put them in a position where their largest asset is growing free of any estate taxes. Next slide, Colton. So one of the points that we want to highlight is very clear, I think, to all of you and to anybody that runs a services company, is certainly that you can't run a business without top quality people, and folks that are motivated, and folks that want to grow, and folks that want to see the company succeed, right? We know this from experience. My partner and I have built a firm, and we have a great team, and we've certainly gone through trials and tribulations, but as owners, we know that we have a team that's willing to step up to the plate and roll up their sleeves and get work done. The question becomes, as you build a sellable firm, how do you align certain employees, key employees' interests with the interests of the founder? How do you align those interests with your personal objectives? Because more than likely, you didn't build a firm just for the sake of building a firm. You built a firm for the sake of having and fulfilling some personal objectives. And that's been a big part of the work that we've done as companies grow and get ready for a sales process, an exit process, is how do you retain, reward, and develop that next generation of leadership? We call it G2. And what we've seen from many engagements that we've worked on is that usually somewhere after 5 to 7 years of a employee being with the firm, particularly if they're a key employee, whether they're a director of operations, an SVP, maybe they're already in a C-suite role, they start to wonder. And they start to say, where is this firm going? How do I fit in the success of the firm? And they start to get a little antsy, a little itchy for, how do I take part, in the success of the firm and in the ownership or in the equity of the firm? And if you haven't explored this thought, or if you haven't explored these concepts, it oftentimes catches our clients off guard. because it comes across as, someone's looking to take something that perhaps they haven't earned, or maybe you're looking to hire a CFO or a CIO that has been very, very talented at another firm, and they clearly haven't proven how they can help your firm just yet because they may have not started with you. You may be early on in the recruiting and the courting process, but they may come out and say, what sort of equity can I get? And if you haven't given this any thought, or you don't have any formal arrangements around this, it can be difficult, and it can be a very difficult conversation. And so we always suggest to our clients, we want to get ahead of it, because if you are looking to build a sellable firm, it's inevitable you're going to need top people, and top people are going to want to be paid top dollar. So the question becomes, how do you align that sort of top dollar compensation where it doesn't break the bank, where it's not you as the owner that takes on all that risk up front, right? And that's where we break compensation down into a couple of buckets. We have what we call cash-based compensation, and then we have equity-based compensation. Cash-based compensation, I think many of you are familiar with it. It's either a salary or some sort of hourly rate that someone's earning. If it's a key person, it's likely a salaried role. It can also take the form of a bonus, some sort of either quarterly, semi-annual, or annual performance bonus that's tied to a percentage of their salary, or that's tied to the success of the company. And it can also be some sort of variable compensation, right? Maybe if it's somebody that's in a BD role, in some sort of sales or capture role, somebody that gets a percentage of the top line of a contract. The point is that cash-based compensation is just paid in cash. And generally speaking, that once it's paid, then it leaves the company coffers, and that's it. It's an expense. Equity-based compensation, on the other hand, can also come in a few forms, and it can come in the form of either true ownership, real equity, meaning you're actually taking on a partner, somebody that's getting on the bus with you, that's going to share in those ownership responsibilities and sharing those risks on a percentage basis compared to what they may have bought. And I emphasize buying and not just giving away equity. That's a very, very important concept from a tax standpoint, number one, and just from just straight building and growing a firm. And then there is also phantom equity or phantom ownership, which is, it sounds like equity, it feels like equity, but it's not quite ownership. But it is tied to the success of the firm. And I'll share a case study and an example of that here in a moment. Some examples of it are what we call stock appreciation rights. There's also stock options, which many of you may be familiar with. And then there's also profit interest units, which is a flavor of appreciation rights with just slightly better tax treatment. Regardless of which path you take, any top talented existing employee or top talented potential hire that you are looking to bring on is going to want to know, how do I participate in the success of the firm? How do I help this firm grow, and what's my future path? And that's an area that we just want to get ahead of. And so next slide, Colton. Here's a brief case study of an engagement that our firm worked on. Was a government contracting client, a very, very successful firm. It was founded about 15 years ago after the two founders spent about 6 to 7 years serving our country through the Air Force. They figured out how government awards contracts, and they decided to retire from the military, and they decided to form their own firm. And on they went. They formed a firm. It was a two-person firm when they started, two partners, 50-50. And here they were when we met them about a year and a half ago. They were all the way up to 115 employees. and just north of $20 million of revenue with very, very healthy margins. When we met them, the two partners also, they were in their late 40s, and they came to us with the thought that they had just won a couple substantial contracts that basically gave them a 5-year runway before the next recompete came up. And they just felt that, right now is a good time to maybe start preparing the firm and getting it ready for an exit. They weren't necessarily, just willing to take any offer that came across for them, because again, they're in their late 40s, but they were trying to plan that out with the thought that in the next 3 to 5 years, they would be departing. And they also felt that there were several key employees that have been with the firm, many of them since the early days, that have been loyal to the firm, and that they felt they wanted to reward in the success should the firm transact, should there be a change of control event. And so that was part of the engagement. We were tasked with solving that puzzle. And what we found, we can go to the next slide, Colton, is we found as we went through a fact-finding process, as we went through our engagement, we found that of the 115 key hires, we found that there were 17 employees that fell in either a sort of executive role, which we called it a company critical role, or they fell into a project critical role, meaning they were really, really valued project managers overseeing different contract relationships that this client had. When we looked at how these folks were paid, most of them were on a salaried role. There were a few that just were on an hourly engagement, but there was no set criteria on how this company paid out bonuses. It was in some ways quite arbitrary and subjective, which it had worked for them, and that's how they built the success. But certainly as we look to scale and build a sellable firm, we needed to put in more formal systems in place for them. And in doing so, we also wanted to enhance this compensation strategy for the company critical and project critical folks, but we also didn't want the company to be the one bearing all that risk. And as a result, what we did is part of our kind of revamped compensation structure for these key executives is we created a short-term, mid-term, and long-term bonus program. Short-term is very easy. It was just their salary or their hourly rate. So we didn't feel we needed to make any large adjustments on that end. But we added this mid-term and long-term bonus component that they did not have. Mid-term bonus, the technical plan, the technical term of what we used is something called a deferred compensation plan. And this is a plan that it is money that's paid in cash. It's paid in cash subject to the employees hitting their own performance metrics and the company hitting its performance metrics. We kept those performance metrics very clear so that employees, these key hires or these key executives knew every week and every day, they knew exactly how it was calculated and they knew exactly what needed to be done. A lot of times we find that companies have taken on a deferred compensation plan, but it's not clear, it's quite confusing, and no one knows how the plan works. And then as a result of that, it doesn't serve a very good purpose. So we made it easy. We tied it to just the company's growth in top line revenue. That was part one. And we tied it to the company's growth in EBITDA, which again, it is a sensitive number to share, but they felt that these key folks, these 17 employees, were already privy to that information. You don't always have to do that, but that's what they decided to do. And then we tied it to, the other 50% was tied to these key hires' individual performance. And every person had its own kind of individual metric as well. That was very clear. We created what we call a vesting schedule for that deferred compensation plan. The vesting schedule simply just means that not all the money is paid out at once. It's paid out over a 5-year period, 20% per year over 5 years. So when you pay out a bonus, if you pay out a bonus on someone, making 200 grand and you pay them 20%, which is 40 grand, once you pay that 40 grand, it's gone, right? If there's no vesting schedule to it. But if you pay it in the form of a deferred comp plan and you put in a vesting schedule, and let's say it's that same 20% on 200 grand, which is $40,000, and you spread it out over 5 years, that becomes a good way to start distributing cash. But again, it's a very, very competitive labor market right now. There's a lot of key hires that are getting very handsome offers from other firms. So this allows you to retain that bonus should that timeline not be met. We added what we call forfeiture provisions, which is, if it is all at will employment, but if an employee isn't cutting it, then they're not also vested in the plan. And again, we tied in some very key performance metrics as well. Stock appreciation awards, that became the long-term bonus aspect. This was very, very attractive for the company critical folks, these sort of top executives, because what we did there is, number one, we conducted evaluation on the firm. We agreed on that number, that sort of baseline number. And anybody that was part of the stock appreciation awards plan got to participate in the growth of the company above that baseline number. So an example of that would be if the baseline number hypothetically is $10 million, and let's say the company transacts in 3 years for $40 million, that's $30 million more than the 10 million baseline. And what we did in this plan is we set aside 20% of that growth would go into the participants of this plan. So 20% of 30 million is $6 million. And that $6 million would then be shared across, of the 17, it was 9 key executives. And so it was a very healthy sum that they got to participate in. And it also became a nice way for the owners, the 2 founders, to experience that type of growth, which quite frankly, they got to a point where it certainly wasn't led just by the founders. They've built a very robust team. And in order for them to get to the next level, they needed to have these key members really aligned with them. The stock appreciation awards was only tied to a change of control event, which means a sale, an actual transaction. So if there was no sale, there's no payout. And that was very clear. That was very clear in the document that we brought in a very sophisticated corporate attorney that also has a lot of GovCon experience to help us on this engagement. So overall, it was a very, very successful outcome. We're now about 1.5 years into this process with them. We rolled it out, and there's just been a lot of alignment. There's been substantial amount of growth that this firm has experienced, and more importantly, we're getting that much closer to a transaction and a liquidity event. So again, can't overemphasize enough the importance of just rewarding and retaining and incentivizing key people, in addition, of course, to the other factors and the other areas that we've discussed. We are Cope Corrales. We're a family office firm. We are focused in the government contracting marketplace. That's part of our division, GovCon Wealth. We're based here in Washington, D.C. Next slide, Colton. Should you have any questions, we're available. We'd always welcome the opportunity to schedule a brief call. And really appreciate the opportunity, Colton and Jennifer and all the team, for allowing us to present in today's webinar.
Thank you, Louis, for a great presentation. and sharing your time with us. And thank you to all who attended. The YouTube video and slides will be available within the next 24 hours. And on behalf of Jennifer Schaus and Associates, we want to thank you for your time.